Okay, thanks for everybody being here. I'm Major Dan Trudeau. I'm the Criminal Division Commander for the Vermont State Police. As everybody's aware, we were called by Montpelier PD early this morning for an officer-involved shooting that they were in right down here on Spring Street. The victim in that case has been identified as Mark Johnson, 62. Of right here in Montpelier at 155 Main Street. He resides. Mr. Johnson was already brought to the medical examiner's office this afternoon. Autopsy has been completed. I think that was in the recent update. And the medical examiner's office has ruled the death a homicide as a result of being shot by police. And the cause was a result of 2 shots to the torso. This morning at approximately 5 a.m., Montpelier PD responded to a call that generated from 155 Main Street here, in which one of the tenants called and advised that there was a man trying to get into his apartment, and this man was armed with a knife. Montpelier PD arrived at the building and identified Mark Johnson as the man who had been trying to get into the apartment. They observed him leaving the back door of the apartment building and were able to relocate him as he crossed Main Street and onto the Spring Street Bridge. At that time, they identified that Mr. Johnson was in possession of what appeared to be a pistol, black pistol. They attempted to de-escalate with Mr. Johnson for a number of minutes, over 5 minutes at least, attempting to get him to put the gun down, put his hands up, offering him help, everything of that nature. On 2 separate occasions, Mr. Johnson attempted to climb the railing as if he was going to jump off the bridge into the water, but did come down on both occasions. Ultimately, Mr. Johnson pointed the pistol at the Montpelier PD officers, and one of them fired at him. At this time, I'm going to not identify the officers that were involved or the number of shots that took place. That would be more information that we'll release probably tomorrow. Upon the shots striking Mr. Johnson, the Montpelier officers immediately rendered aid to him, and an ambulance transported him to the hospital in Berlin, where he was pronounced deceased, and then was later transported to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. The officers were not injured in this situation, and at this time they're on an administrative leave capacity per their department policy. That's a good question. I knew I had something else I was going to say. No, this was captured on their WatchGuard cruiser cameras. Montpelier PD does not issue or wear body cameras.
Will you release that today?
Nope, we will not be releasing that today. We still have to review all of that material.
Have you seen it?
I've seen parts of it, not all of it.
There's a neighbor here who said this guy was gentle and suffered from mental illness, and he was sort of concerned that there was an overreaction with force to this incident. Do you have any response?
Well,
or
what I
knowledge?
can say is that, yes, Mr. Johnson does have a history of some mental illness, and we're still looking into that. But the officers did perceive him holding a pistol. A photo of that pistol was submitted out with a recent press release and was actually identified as a Daisy pellet pistol.
Was it loaded?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. I can say just from personal knowledge, it looks very, very similar to a Beretta real pistol.
And so, is it made out of metal? Is it made out of plastic? I couldn't really tell from the picture.
I couldn't say for 100% for that model. I have not handled it since it's evidence, so only some of our crime scene people did. But in nature, most of those products are made of some degree of metal and plastic.
Can you back up to the part about the knife? I heard he was maybe trying to jimmy his way into his own apartment. Did someone perceive that as a threat?
No, I don't have any information that he was trying to jimmy his way into his own apartment. He was at another apartment trying to get in, and that's not the way it was perceived. That, we still have some interviews to do on that. So he was found in possession of a small bladed knife. So yes.
Was it another tenant who called?
Yes, it was. We haven't spoken to that gentleman yet, so I'm not going to release his name. We're still trying to attempt to locate him.
But by
What-
the time the officers arrived, the knife was not a threat. It was just the pellet gun. The knife was not a factor on the bridge.
They did not see the knife, to my awareness. They did not see the knife on the bridge. Only the pistol.
What specifically did police do to try and de-escalate the situation?
Repeatedly, they attempted to offer him help, asked him to put the weapon down, put his hands up, asked him to climb down from the bridge railing. Over and over, they offered their assistance to him and encouraged him to put down the weapon.
Was he saying anything back to them? And what did he say?
I can't really say on that. I know that he was saying some stuff, but some of the footage that I've watched so far, obviously it doesn't pick up what he's saying because he was far away, and we have not interviewed the officers yet.
Do you know if Washington County Mental Health was called?
At what point?
During this incident, a crisis intervention team from Washington County.
I don't have any information on that yet. All I can say was that the initial call was at 5:04 this morning, and that the shots that were fired occurred at approximately 5:16. So there's a very, very short period of time in which this all transpired.
How many
How close and how far away Mr. Johnson was to the police officer?
When the shooting occurred,
Correct.
I couldn't give you an exact measurement, other than I know it was, in the area of the other side of this island and halfway down that bridge. So approximately 40 yards maybe, but that's just a guess. I don't have an accurate measurement from the crime scene team.
He was climbing on the bridge and then came down and helped the pistol up.
Say that once more
He
time.
was on the bridge and then came down from the bridge and helped the pistol up the officers.
Essentially, yeah. There was a couple different occasions. He was on the railing on one side of the bridge and then got down, crossed the road, and eventually climbed the bridge railing again on the other side. And once he came down, yeah, he did point that pellet pistol towards the officer.
Do you know, did the officers shoot from this side and
I don't
going that way?
have the answer to that, sir, yet. I'm sorry.
Well, the question is, were any bullets recovered from that house or from this building, I suppose, if they were shooting from the other way?
No, we don't have any reason to believe that any bullets will be recovered from any of these houses. I know from information I learned from the medical examiner's office that they were fragmented bullets, so they wouldn't have traveled anywhere.
How many?
Would you have used a taser gun?
I'm sorry, I can't hear
Would
you.
you have used a taser gun? You guys have tasers, or?
No, that was not an option for these officers at the time.
Montpelier is actually one of the first police forces in the state to work on the Team 2 approach to dealing with mental health crises with
Correct.
mental health professionals they work with.
Okay.
I just wrote about it this week that they used the beanbag shotgun to subdue a very similar incident on Barry Street in March, where somebody with a knife was threatening to hurt himself and his family and the police officers. But they have not used the beanbag shotgun in full force. Actually being trained to do it.
Well, what you're asking me to do is tell you what I think they perceived and what they should have done, and that's not fair for me to do in this account. What I can say, what is fair to say is that they felt threatened by the weapon being pointed at them, and that, as you know, guns can fire at any range. So that may not have been a reasonable option to them. They may have considered it, but again, that's speculation on my firearms law.
How many officers were on the scene? How many fired?
Again, I can't tell you how many fired yet, and we will release that information tomorrow. There was 2 officers that responded to the initial call, and then there was backup officers that came, and that was after the fact.
Both Montpelier police officers.
Yes.
Was this the apartment he was trying to get into with a knife? Was that close to this apartment? Same floor? Was it
Same floor.
just
Yep.
same floor, far from
I've
the-
never been in the building, so I couldn't tell you how close they are to each other, so it's hard for me to comment on that.
Did the Barry Police Department respond as well?
Berry City did send a few officers. I don't know anything about their response when they got here or anything.
Was that after the shooting?
It was after the shooting.
At what point did the officer grab the rifle?
I don't know. We haven't interviewed those officers yet, so that's something that will take place within the days to come, and we will probably learn information like that, but I don't have that answer.
Will the officers be interviewed before or after? Will they be allowed to view the video before they're interviewed?
Our practice in investigating officer-involved shootings is now that we do not allow officers to review video before they make statements. So I think that answers that question. But you had a part 2 to your question, and I don't remember what it was.
I think that I tried to summarize it in different ways. So I think it was the same question, just phrased different, about whether or not they were going to see it, at what point they were going to see the video. Can you talk about police's interactions with Mr. Johnson, prior interactions police might have had with him?
Yeah, I'm aware of a few different involvements that they had within the month of June. There was 3 different involvements, a couple that Montpelier PD and had 2, and I think Berry City had 1. A few of those revolved around some comments of some mental health problems.
Were there charges filed in those incidents?
No, there were not.
In the press release, it mentions that Berry City Police are assisting with the investigation, as well as the University of Vermont Police. Just curious why the University of Vermont Police are involved in the investigation.
Time after, on occasion, we may invite detectives from other agencies just to come in, just assist with some general information collecting, and just as a part of training for them, just so they see how our organization works and stuff of that nature. I can't hear you with this truck, I'm sorry. No, I have a cold, my ears are plugged too, so everything you guys are saying, I'm trying to read your lips. Motorcycle too, of course. Dump truck, can we do that? So
different shooting at high school in January of last year. And we're hearing nationally that there's a problem with, and Nathan Giffen was known to have mental health issues, drug substance abuse issues. This is another instance of a man with a mental health issue. Do you think that this places more of an urgent need to address mental health issues and police response to that in the state of Vermont? I know that the state police have actually asked for more training along those lines.
Yes, I would say this is a nationwide issue. So yeah, it's always something that's being addressed. There's being additional training, mental health. I can't speak for them, but I'm certain they're working on their end as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is a Vermont issue. I reflect this as a national issue. I've been to conferences and learned that agencies all over the state are seeing increases in officer-involved shootings. Anybody else? Very good. All right.